Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video, and we have a massive class update that may completely change things or maybe just go along the lines that you were already thinking for your class selection in 9.1. And I'm going to be talking about this mostly with regards to PvP, but also to try and surround some logic into why these specific changes appear to be happening. I'm going to be talking about these class ones. I'm going to be talking about the legendaries that all got updated as well. So you can see on our screen right here, the first one that jumps off the page is the Beast Mastery Hunters. This is a spec that I was already saying was going to be dominating in PvP. It already was and is getting a flat 15% damage buff to basically all of its most important spells: Kill Command, Cobra Shot, Barbed Shot, Multi-Shot, and Kill Shot. So if you weren't already making a Beast Mastery Hunter, or you aren't already one right now, it's gonna be really good. And I mean, if you wanted a fast-paced meta, these changes are definitely going to make things fast. But again, I think that this is likely for PvE. Hunters are underperforming by a huge margin, and same with Fire Mage as well. Marksmanship Hunter, you're going to be pretty happy about these buffs as well. 10% to Aim Shot, Arcane Shot, Multi-Shot, Rapid Fire, as well as Kill Shot by 15%. Potentially we see some Marksmanship Hunters coming back from the dark side of being nerfed so hard. They kind of got sent into the Shadow Realm at the start of the expansion, and now these buffs are somewhat reverting those nerfs that had originally been made to them. So perhaps Marksmanship will be revived as such. And Survival as well is getting a 10% damage buff to its main spells: Serpent Sting, Wildfire Bomb, Raptor Strike, Mongoose Bite, Flanking Strike, and Kill Shot. So it does appear, at least in PvP, that it is the time to be a hunter. In PvE, maybe not, if you needed this many buffs and this large of buffs to start to become competitive. Now, of course, I'm someone who wants the game to be more fast-paced than it was starting to turn out to be. But I am a bit worried that it's only Beast Mastery Hunters that are having the fun. Although from playing, melee cleaves are quite dominant across the board. It almost feels like you need to have at least one melee DPS on your team to be able to gain from the benefits of it, because there was recently a change to how armor works in PvP, to my understanding. So armor is now less valuable, which means physical damage is higher. This is benefiting specs like Outlaw Rogue and Fury Warrior, because they were pretty much entirely physical damage. So a ton of these changes are allowing other specs to sort of come up from the bottom that they were stuck at for a long time, and I think it's creating a faster game, which I like overall. But I am worried a bit with Beast Mastery Hunter specifically, and Fire Mage here as we move down to the Fire Mage buffs, which is getting a 20% Fireball buff. I'm okay with that. I think buffing the casted spells like they did with Arcane Blast and Frostbolt for Frost Mage is a good direction for those classes. I think that's a great change. But Fire Blast damage by 15% and Pyro Blast by 5% on their instant spells might be a little bit over the top. Fire Mage is actually in a great spot in PvP, despite all of the nerfs that have dropped them down quite a lot in PvE. In PvP, having Ring of Fire is now allowing you multiple burst cooldowns for goes. So you can set up a 3-2-1 crowd control the whole team, press Combust, and then do that again and use Ring of Fire, do that again and use Combust, and you can cycle these to always have a major threat during a stun. So you're going to always be threatening. This is going to increase that threatening period of time, as well as allow you some extra damage in between. But again, I feel like we need to be a little bit hesitant on freaking out about damage buffs, because I feel like we've all been asking for them. Still, maybe some other specs, some range specs getting nerfed here that don't necessarily need to. Shadow Priest Devouring Plague damage is being reduced by 8%, and I've already seen some sentiment from PvEers saying that these buffs make sense, but the nerf to Shadow Priest is a bit strange. Shadow Priest is a spec that always does really well on multi-target, but Devouring Plague is more of a single-target oriented spell. So in PvE, maybe it doesn't feel like this would be the most necessary, and it's definitely going to hurt you in PvP, as well as your Dissonant Echoes Conduit Void Bolt damage being reduced by 5%, which I believe Shadow Priests were picking up that conduit in PvP. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Shadow Priests were for extra single target damage. Shadow Priests have been enjoying a lot of fun with their Void Volley talent, just triggering disorients and blasting people out in Void form. I've been seeing a lot of Shadow Priests having fun, but this slight nerf to your Devouring Plague is going to be a little bit sad face for you. And Affliction Warlock, I felt like everybody kind of forgot about you, but you're getting a 5% damage buff across the board. Again, maybe not what Affliction needs necessarily, because in PvP, for its damage to be relevant, I almost think you would have to buff its stats by even 100%. to counteract the amount of healing that's available in the game to all of the hybrids. So affliction warlocks will spend a lot of global cooldowns putting damage over time effects on multiple targets. Maybe they spend 12 global cooldowns to get all their dots out, and they start getting a target low, and it takes maybe 30 seconds. One word of glory, 12 global cooldowns of work, 30 seconds of time, just gone out the window. This is the main reason affliction struggles, is because there's so much healing that's coming from sources that isn't just the healer. And you can see that major difference when you jump over to TBC arena, for example, where classes can't heal unless they're healers, basically, and warlocks are so powerful because there's nothing recovering the damage that's being output from them, albeit they are probably a little bit too strong, of course, in TBC. But that element of rot has kind of been removed from PvP for some time because of all of these extra healing effects. So a 5% damage buff across the board, I'm not sure will be enough to really get affliction going anywhere, but if you're PvE, you're probably pretty happy about that. And then jumping over to the legendaries, these are legendaries that are coming for the new ones. They basically buff your covenant ability. And so what you need to think about in PvP is, does that class even play that covenant in PvP, right? Or you need to think, is this legendary going to be good enough that they could switch to that covenant? And those are the things you really need to take into consideration. So for the Death Knight legendaries, they are not buffing the Necrolord one. And Necrolord is pretty much what every Death Knight in PvP plays. Maybe this is done on purpose to try and incentivize some of the other covenants, but I think the effect of the Abomination limb is one that can't be replaced by almost any amount of damage that would be available from these legendaries. So because of these changes, the final sentence one for Kyrian, now damage per sack is increased to 3% to 15%. So that's basically double, not doubled, increased by a third, and the duration will last 18 seconds up from 10. I don't think this is going to outweigh being able to just grippy hands the whole team and everybody together and then clumping them all up and bursting them down. I really don't think it's going to replace that. And then for Venthyr, Insatiable Hunger's base damage is increased by 12%. Again, extra damage versus being able to move people around the map, likely not going to change anything. And then for Night Fade Death Knights, Rampant Transference, strength gain increased to 2% per stack, up from 1%. Yet again, it's in PvP, it's tough to compete with that effect. And you would need so much extra damage to compete with being able to reposition players like that, especially as a melee DPS, and with Death Knights playing a lot of cleaves, that I think it's unlikely that these legendaries really shift Death Knights away from the Necrolord. Now, Demon Hunter, much the same in PvP, you're playing Night Fae pretty much exclusively, and the Night Fae one is being buffed, and this one now will grant 4 agility per target struck by your hunt, so you're going to get more main stat. The hunt is doing a ton of direct damage and a ton of dot damage. Is it going to be enough to replace the I-Beam legendary? I think it's going to be debatable. Maybe you should try and make a 235 one with your extra Soul Ash and feel it out, because that's just literally going to be which one does more damage. I would say a legendary that's directly oriented with the hunt is a good idea, because the hunt is basically all of your kill window in PvP, so that makes a lot of sense. Now for Venthyr, you're going to get an extended duration of Sinful Brand by 0.7 seconds. Sinful Brand is already dispellable, has a ton of counters in PvP, and just really isn't the hunt. It's not as cool as the hunt. It doesn't do as much damage as the hunt. So I don't think we're going to see a shift for Demon Hunters with this legendary change. For Druids, now remember there's Feral, there's a ton of Druid specs, right? Resto, Boomkin. The Kyrian one is getting a pretty significant buff, and I think this one will be most relevant for Kyrian Boomkins who are wondering if they need to re-roll. You're going to be pretty thankful about this buff because the main legendary that you were running, at least that I was running, got nerfed. You can still just play the Star Surge damage increase, the Dreambinder one. That one is still great. This one will just directly compete with that. This is going to be bonus stats now, give 8%, and your mastery rating will be increased by 150 every time you activate it, up from 100, which is really good. It's going to be during your burst windows, but you can't have this one and have the Dreambinder, which might be the main problem in PvP. The only way I could see this really picking up speed is if the conduit that reduces the cooldown of Kindred Spirits gets to a point where you're maybe having a 30-second cooldown of Kindred Spirits, so you're activating it so much more frequently that you're getting way more damage out of it from this. For Feral, I still see a Necrolord as the safe pick, Night Fae for some really cheesy burst. Same thing with Boomkin. A lot of people are shifting to Necrolord and Night Fae for cheesy burst. And Resto, you're pretty much stuck as Necrolord. Having Adaptive Swarm and having your legendary interact to extend it is just a very powerful effect. Now having the added Purge protection is great. So I don't really see this shifting you. Now, Night Fae is getting a buff in this regard for its legendary. Celestial Spirits, now your Convoke duration will be reduced by 25% rather than 50%, so you get a couple more spells out of it. And you'll get this effect, I think, every minute now as well. So it could be really good for some cheesy kills, especially on a Feral Druid in Jungle Cleave. If you want to pair up with the BM Hunters that just got buffed, that could be a ton of damage. I would say that for Feral Druid, the Covenants are more competitive, and this legendary may jump out to you if you're a Night Fae. So this is going to be one that might be nice for you. Now for Hunter in PvP, you're pretty much always running the Feign Death legendary, so these ones not going to matter too much. For Night Fae, Fragments of the Elder Antlers, the proc chance increased to 100% when fewer than 5 targets hit. You just run out of it. It's not that great. And then for Venthyr, Pouch of Razor Fragments, bleed is increased to 60%, up from 35%. The radius is increased to 12 yards, up from 8. So being able to get more damage out of Flayed Shot could be a good idea when you can get away with not running the Feign Death legendary. But the Feign Death legendary is so good that I really don't think you're going to drop it. It's just always the go-to in PvP for Hunters. But maybe it gets to a point where you're not a target or something, and you could get away with this extra Flayed Shot damage, which would be great. But I don't think this legendary is going to change too much in PvP for Hunters. Now moving on to Priest, looking at the Kyrian, so the Boons of the Ascended. And I saw a lot of PvE Priests really excited about this legendary. Spears of Harmony, cooldown reduction increased to 3 seconds, was 2 seconds, and cap increased to 80 seconds, was 60 seconds. So buffing up your Boon of Ascended. Priests in PvP pretty much are all running Venthyr. Running Boon of the Ascended is kind of a meme. Even with this legendary, it's still going to be somewhat of a meme, although your legendary is kind of up on the tables, right? You can, most priests are playing Sephuz, so which means that you could flex that legendary a little bit and try some extra stuff with it. And if you are a Kyrian priest, this might be an all right option if you really wanted to try and make it work in PvP. But I think that it's likely unlikely. And then for Venthyr, Shadow Word Manipulation, gain 5% critical strike for each second remaining, gain some extra damage in your mind games. Might be a decent legendary pickup as a substitute for Sephuz, especially for Disciplined Priests, getting the Honor Talent Trinity, I believe, for more crit chance when you have Atonement. So getting a huge amount of crit and just getting massive mind games could be really fun in PvP. This is kind of one of the first legendaries that is standing out to me with some potential for Priest. And maybe for Shadow, spawning more shadowy apparitions. But double PI and the Shadowmen legendary are pretty tough to compete with for Shadow. Then looking at Mage, we've got Kyrian. Pretty much no one plays Kyrian Mage anymore, but maybe. Harmonic Echo damage is increased to 30%, was 25%. I think still getting the cooldown reduction is very important from Night Fae mages, and then Venthyr having the interrupt reduction, especially as Arcane. I see a lot of Arcane mages playing Venthyr, is a super important component when you only have one school of magic. The Night Fae legendary is getting buffed, but again with Mage, much like Hunter, everybody's playing Triune Ward, and you really can't compete with it. Didn't receive any nerfs in this patch. It's still the main legendary. So despite these legendaries being buffed for Mage, it may have impact in PvE, but in PvP, you're not really going to have too much impact. Now looking at Monk, we've got Necro Lord. Some monks are opting to play Necro Lord and get more survivability, especially because damage is so high. I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're into dueling or 2v2 or like BGs by yourself. And even in 3v3, I think maybe the Weapons of Order is really good for just the all-ins on your Zwen, obviously, but getting some extra tankiness is going to be competitive. There's a lot of situations now where I'm seeing some classes kind of be like, do I want the all-in one-shot Covenant, or do I want to go for the tanky Covenant? And I have started to see more monks going for Necrolord. And with this one, you'd get the Bountiful Brew, procs per minute increased to 1.5, up from 1.25, probably the least buffed legendary in my mind, at least for PvP. And then for Venthyr, Sinister's Teaching, the cooldown reduction increased to 5 seconds, was 3 seconds. I gotta be honest, I'm not sure what that means for the cooldown reduction, if that means the base ability, because it's quite a long cooldown. That Venthyr Covenant for Monk is more or less to try and predict incoming crowd control and then activate all of your images, and they kind of heal while you're crowd controlled, which can be a good tactic, especially with Hunters being powerful and you going into a freezing trap quite frequently. But I wouldn't be sold on this legendary making it super competitive for Mistweaver. Likely Necrolord's still going to be the best because you're going to need that extra survivability. That is still their main weakness in my mind, even with all of the new honor talents. Now for Rogue, Night Fae, Toxic Onslaught, the buff duration is increased to 12 seconds. It's dispellable. No, I don't see a lot of rogues running Night Fae anymore, particularly. Most rogues, the safe pick is Necrolord. The all-in one-shot is Venthyr, and possibly Kyrian, and Kyrian isn't listed here, but the Kyrian legendary for Rogue that's coming out is going to allow you, I think, a 7 combo point anima charge or something like that. It's going to be a really big hit of damage. It could see potential for Kyrian Rogue to come back with that legendary specifically as a substitute for the legendary that got nerfed, the crit percent one that got nerfed in PvP. Rogue is probably, from what I've seen so far, one of the main ones that could mix up which covenant you play. Venthyr is similar, just extra flagellation is doing a lot of damage. You're going to get versatility as Venthyr as well when you get deeper down the Nagia tree, which is a really good just soulbind pickup in PvP in general. So if you're already Venthyr, maybe play it out until you get to that versatility proc, and then consider switching to Kyrian if other rogues have already jumped ship before that point. And then Necrolord Rogue, I don't really think you can go wrong with this, just having Bone Spike, burst damage, having all of the survivability to help you out, because that is, again, one of the weaker points for Rogue, is getting exploited when you overextend. It's going to be the safe pick still, even with these legendary changes. And now for Shaman, pretty much every Shaman except Enhance, right? So Resto and Ellie play Necrolord, and then Enhance plays Venthyr for the big Chain Harvest hit. The first one on the board is Kyrian. The totem is too easy to kill. The totem is too easy to avoid. The totem really hasn't been proven to do too much. So this buffing the Vesper totem, it's just one of the Covenant abilities that just doesn't function very well in PvP. I don't really think this legendary is going to change that. And then for Night Fae, I've seen some Night Fae. I guess I can't say I haven't seen any Night Fae, probably Absurge particularly. Seeds of Rampant Growth. So the crit bonus from it is increased to 4%, was 3%. For Enhancement Shamans, your Feral Spirit's cooldown reduction increased to 9 seconds, up from 7. So trying to get some Night Fae Enhancement Shamans over there. I think if you're one of the memers with the Fae Transfusion, do you pick this up? Losing your Earthshield legendary, losing your Earthquake legendary, because that seems to be the one most Shamans are playing, at least Resto. It's playing the Earthquake Ellie legendary and just doing a ton of damage. These legendaries I don't think are going to compete with that. And for Necrolord, Splintered Elements, so this would really only be considered for Ellie, I think, is that you'll get increased haste bonus to 8% up from 5. Again, losing your big Lava Burst legendary for some extra stats, I think that's unlikely. So I don't think the Shaman legendary is going to change too much. And then finally, Warlock, Venthyr. I don't think any Warlocks are not playing Night Fae. If you're Demo, you're playing Necrolord. So let's see. Well, this changed my mind on that. Contained Perpetual Explosion. Impending Catastrophes damage has been increased to 125% with 75%. So Impending Catastrophe potentially hitting hard now, but losing the mobility on Night Fae is going to leave you wide open to a lot of bad situations. And it's really weird that Soul Shape is actually the main reason, I think, that a lot of Warlocks opt to go with Night Fae, and also the benefits of Soul Rot being nature rather than shadow, so you can interrupt on multiple schools. So I think this is unlikely, but maybe, no, it's unlikely. I don't think this legendary will change your Covenant for your Warlock spec. And then for Warriors, they're buffing the Venthyr one. A lot of Warriors are playing Condemn. Some Warriors have switched to Necrolord to gain the Mastery benefit. Right now, Warrior has all the options. I find it tough to really figure out in all situations which Covenant is the best, and they're all really awesome. It's actually really hard to pick. But their Venthyr one is getting buffed. The Sinful Surge. Condemn now extends the duration of Recklessness by 1.5 seconds, up from 2. So as a Fury Warrior, if you're playing Venthyr, potentially you pick this up. Gotta say, I'm not super knowledgeable when it comes to Fury Warrior legendary, so if somebody is a Fury Warrior and I'm totally off base by saying potentially pick this up, let me know. It actually looks like it was nerfed by 0.5, so maybe you don't pick it up at all for PvP. But other than that, I hope that you enjoyed the video. So far, the game is a lot faster, so I would definitely tell you to check it out. I'm a little bit worried about BM Hunter getting buffed too much, but I'm also worried about talking about damage buffs being bad and then getting nerfs and we get the game going slow again. So, you know, we got to kind of let things mix out here. Maybe they do a PvP specific change as well to counteract these buffs, similarly to how they've been doing for Arms Warriors when they've been receiving PvE buffs because they underperform in PvE. And do remember that these changes, I have to say, are almost entirely considering PvE, maybe a little bit of PvP with the AF and the Survival and the MM. But these are to bring up numbers in PvE. The Race the World First is coming out. They're probably trying to get these out as fast as they can, dealing with bugs and stuff. So I would imagine that if these end up being a really big problem, and considering we've been asking for more damage in PvP, that they would make a PvP specific change to counteract them at least somewhat. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. Thumbs up the video if you liked it, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free, just lets you know when these videos go live. And if you want to check me out, I stream on twitch.tv/Supatease, and I'm doing my best to stream every day, playing arenas. So thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.